Hello, and welcome to the Story Machine 9000, a podcast where we conceptualize movies based on the 48-hour film concept. Our movies are comprised of four things: a genre, a line of dialogue, a prop, and a location. It's kind of like that dog that you're not quite sure what breed it is, but that kind of makes it lovable because it's like a mishmash of all these dogs put together.
So a mutt.
It's a mutt of a movie. I'm Joshua Lytle, a filmmaker and storyteller.
I'm Chris Wegman. I'm also a filmmaker and a date night specialist.
Hi, I'm Justin Teal, and I make websites by day and I dungeon master at night.
Well, welcome everyone. This is actually the first episode where we've only had 3 storytellers.
3.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of interested to see how this is going to go.
Yeah.
Well, without further ado, let's fire up the story machine.
All right. So I'm going to turn the nozzle. Oh, the gauge is upside down. There we go. That's better.
It's working at maximum strength.
All right. We've got our genre coming out. It is mockumentary.
Oh. Okay.
A genre inside a genre. Here comes the prop. It is a box of old photos.
Oh, perfect.
It fits.
Yeah, that's fine.
And the line is draw an X on the door. And the location is roof of a skyscraper.
Whoa.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Well,
mockumentary, which
all right.
inherently is, mockumentary obviously is a joke of a documentary.
right.
It's a fake documentary.
I was
Right.
like, so could you give me another example of?
Like The Office.
I
kind of?
mean, I think so. So yeah, it's like a documentary that's not entirely real, right?
Okay.
I mean, so
Yeah.
Spinal Tap,
No,
Best in Show.
no.
No, it's fine. No. I'm trying to find something that's sort of universal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's not necessarily a self-aware documentary. Like if you were making a documentary about Pokemon and you're making fun of it, like is that a mockumentary? I don't want to get stuck with this.
I don't know. I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm just going to say that I think the difference between a documentary and a mockumentary is, aside from just it being humorous, I think it's satire. It's poking fun
At the documentary genre.
at a person or the genre. I mean, this one's complicated, man.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely ashamed to admit that I don't know enough about mockumentary.
But like Best in Show is about people who do dog competitions.
Yeah,
Like,
it's about dog shows.
dog shows. And so dog shows are real, and there's
Right.
real people who do dog shows, but the people who are in the documentary are all actors making like a fake documentary about dog shows.
Okay,
Right.
So
And
that's the main difference. Like, so a mockumentary is literally like
Or like
pretending it's a documentary.
or like
Yeah.
The Office, where they're making a documentary, but they're all actors, and so there's a script and there's some
Okay.
Is it fair to say that it's a comedy that's shot in the style of a documentary?
that would be a good way to put it.
I think this is a likely place to start, right? So last time, I think we had a lot of success with just trying to figure out what were some of those hallmarks, what were some of those just
Classic.
some of the what you would expect, and then we can kind of either go with the flow, or we can start to diverge from there.
So the tropes of a mockumentary, apart from it being funny, really are the same as a documentary. So like, what do you expect in a documentary? Usually there's a character or an event that's being covered, and there's interviews to camera a lot of times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, if we start with the way we did last time, we kind of listed things that you would see in a mockumentary.
That's what I was saying, like,
Yeah.
or documentary, because
Okay,
they're very
sorry.
similar. That's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you want to start that, if we wanted to, you could like write up, talking to the camera, like
Yeah.
the interview scene.
Yeah. So interview, B-roll. I mean,
Is there, sorry, so making eye contact with the camera is kind of something that they would do?
Could.
Yeah, it kind of depends on how
What kind of
how
documentary
raw
it
it is, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, in a Ken Burns documentary, no one would ever address the camera. It's very formal. It's always off camera, but then there's a whole sort of subgenre of documentary that's a lot rawer.
Like a Michael Moore documentary.
Right.
Where
Right.
he's like holding the camera and might like turn and look at it.
Well, like that, and I guess with the whole mockumentary, like The Office and I'm going to stick with Office and Parks and Rec just because those are the two that I know.
Yeah.
But like they're always like part of the joke is someone looking at the camera like, can you
Right.
believe this guy?
Right. So yeah, breaking the fourth wall is definitely, I think, is definitely
That's a good.
yeah. I would also, in addition to breaking the fourth wall, I would also say unexpected events.
Okay.
Right. You know,
Yeah.
when documentaries kind of have an agenda or bend to them, and then something happens that sort of forces it to turn on its heel, and they do something else.
I would say that's a good talking about. They have a sort of an agenda. So yeah, there's like a purpose to making a documentary. Like this store is closing, and I want to talk about the history of it, or you know, these are people who live in the middle of the jungle, and we're gonna go find out how they live. You know,
Right.
Or even just like
Any-
the ones like why sugar is bad for you.
why sugar? Yeah, any of those. Yeah, the government's corrupt, and we're gonna show you why, and we're gonna interview them, and if they don't tell
Yeah.
us, we're gonna knock on their door as much as we can.
But I feel like most mockumentaries are centered around either a person or a group of people who are participating in some event. I think of a documentary now, the IFC series. Have you seen that?
I've seen a few of them.
Okay, so
go.
yes, so
Should've started there.
perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
So I feel like we kind of have a pretty firm grasp on some of the elements that are associated with the genre. If we look at our other criteria, whether it's the draw an X on the door, the box of old photos, or the roof of a skyscraper, does that conjure up anything in reference to who our character or characters or what event it might be centered around?
Yeah. I mean, I think for this one, the next step, using this stuff that we've gotten, we should make up or pick an event or a character that the documentary centers around.
yeah, because that was the interesting thing about this one, and maybe it's a way to stretch our muscles too. Is this one doesn't need the character as much, or at least like the actual like a person character, because a lot of those just there's a million people in them.
The main character could be the guy making the documentary.
Yeah.
Oh,
or
yeah.
or the event itself kind of becomes a character.
Yeah.
But
Right.
Um,
Or the main character could be dead because
Yeah.
it could be it could have a sort of a historical.
Yeah, so things I was going to point out are like, so the box of photos, obviously that could be a good catalyst for having a documentary. Like, I found this box of photos and we're going to go through them and find out the history of somebody. Or, I don't know, the drawing an X on a wall always makes me think, there's a lot of documentaries on Vimeo about spray painters, like famous spray painters in cities.
Like
Oh.
graffiti artists?
Like graffiti
Yeah.
artists.
Okay.
Spray painters, graffiti artists.
well,
I'm going to use a really complicated...
well, now refer to them as spray painters.
Yeah.
But
It's interesting. I feel like the hardest thing is putting something out there, because now that we've established this sort of yes and exercise, I feel like the minute you put something out there, you're committing the entire group to either a
You
really
could-
awesome hour or the fucking worst hour of their life.
Well, so if we lay
Thanks for
these
the
out
pressure,
there,
Josh.
let's just like ways to maybe sort of use things. Like, so again, like the box of old photos could either, it's not like the whole thing, right? But it could be the start or even the end of the kind of movie. And same thing with the location, like both great ways to like just show either time passing or just you could start or end there. So I was just saying they're not necessarily like super key.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, and at the risk of working backwards, I really want to end
yeah.
on the roof of a skyscraper like somebody's going to jump off.
That's what I was thinking. That's exactly what I was thinking.
All right,
Okay,
majority rule.
That went way darker. I was like, yeah, roof skyscraper. Maybe it's going to show the graffiti artist is like work.
That would be a
oh,
great,
nope.
like, unexpected thing. Like in the middle of an interview, like the person like decides, like, I'm going to jump off the skyscraper.
Okay.
And the,
So already I'm getting a sort of exit through the gift shop vibe. Did you see that one?
I saw some of it. Yeah.
Okay, about graffiti artists and Banksy was in it.
Oh yeah. Maybe you should just go to explain.
I could see this being sort of an opportunity to make a mockumentary of that same idea, whether it's this street artist or
So you want to like double down on the graffiti thing, or so I like the idea of like that style, but I was wondering, is there more of a mockumentary way of doing it? The only thing I could think of right away was some type of like balloon artist.
Let me help, not help with the balloon thing.
Sure.
I think that's a great idea. But another thing I like in mockumentaries and in that documentary now, the first one is sort of like a fall from grace, and then that they like it's like those.
Which one was the first one again?
It was with the two old ladies.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I forget what documentary it's based on. But yeah.
But it's like they were these famous mother-daughter act, and now they're just like crazy old women who no one remembers them because they sort of went crazy and sort of fell down through the ranks of society.
I feel like we can sort of triangulate this a little bit. I like where we're going in reference to maybe not honing directly in on street art, but an artist in general, and especially one who's maybe past his prime.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing about a mockumentary, I think, too, is they take, I don't know, it is a satire where someone, the character thinks that they are bigger than they should be, so the women in the first episode of the documentary now, they think they're like entitled to all this stuff, and they're like clearly just jokes of themselves. And
so I'm just going to throw it out there. I like this idea of an artist who's sort of fallen from grace. He's sort of lived his he's sort of experienced his golden years, and he still has delusions of grandeur, right? He still thinks he's hot shit and this, that, and the other, and he just kind of refuses to give it up. And by virtue of a documentary crew following him around, that just kind of feeds his ego a little bit. Yeah. But he doesn't understand that they're following him around because he's kind of a has-been.
Yeah.
Does that read? I realized that was a lot of words.
No, I like that. I was just picturing, I don't know why, but is the guy a emoji artist? Like before they were real emojis? And like we follow the guy who created the first smiley face, like sideways, and he's still like creating these emojis via keyboard. Like just like the key, just like the pound sign smiley face.
Like he's somebody who doesn't want to switch to.
Yeah, like he's a hardcore. Like he never uses the real emojis. He's always using. I don't know.
I wonder if we could take him farther back. Like maybe it's like that. That could have been like he thinks that emojis were the culmination of his like I made this thing, and then far down the road, emojis that came from me. Like my thing caused emojis, and I never got recognized for that.
Like it's one of his periods, right? So he claims to be responsible for all these things, right? And we're sort of following him through all the different periods that he had in reference to his art, and that's the box of photos, right? Yeah. So he holds up a photo, he says, "This is me typing the very first emoji. And this is me 2 years later adding the winky face. I was the one who invented that." Who would have known that a semicolon?
That's not the. I know you can go track the guy down who actually created this.
Oh, really?
Like he ended he's like super proud of it.
Oh shit.
I don't know if that matters. I don't know if we need to cut things. But,
I don't know. I mean, I don't
know. But
yeah, and so what I was getting at is like maybe he was an actual artist who created, like this could have been in the 60s, and he was creating art on a typewriter. He was creating like really like blank sheets with little symbols on them, like, and they were in like avant-garde sort of place, art studios.
Did you ever do the ASCII stuff where you would like space x space like you would make art, like that's what I was imagining when you're doing it. It's like on that printer paper with the
a dot matrix.
The dot matrix paper.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. This thing that like every child that we grew up with did on their calculator, or maybe when they were bored in class.
Yeah.
What if this guy thinks that he sort of claims that he did it first?
The interesting thing about mockumentary is I feel like we kind of have a general arc already, right? We've identified this character. We haven't given him a name yet. We sort of identified maybe some of his character flaw. He's a little bit too big for his britches. He has delusions of grandeur, that sort of thing. This documentary crew is following him around, not because he's famous, but because he's sort of a has-been. He's washed up. And I was telling you the other day, Chris, that this is an exercise that Pixar normally does, and they call them gag sessions, where they just kind of, in an effort to fill in the gaps, they just kind of throw out a bunch of different things that might, in our case, different pieces of art that this guy may have created, or different installations or performance. And so I wonder if, just to kind of create the character a little bit, if we just kind of throw some stuff out in the air and just see what sticks in reference to some of the stuff that he's responsible for. Because by virtue of being a documentary or a mockumentary, it's kind of informational, right? And he's going to go, I imagine he's going to sort of take us through some of the stuff that he's done in his life. And then maybe eventually we can start to figure out if there's a conflict. Maybe eventually he's confronted by somebody who claims that that they did it first or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I do like his So maybe I agree. Maybe we should come up with some art, and I think one of them should be that, he centered the paper and the typewriter sort of off centered in the middle, and just did semicolon, asterisk, and all of a sudden it became, he's like, this is it. And he pulled the sheet out, and that was his first. He's like, I made the winky face.
Right. So
I made a winky face.
So I like Justin's idea. He claims that he invented the emoji. He did it on a typewriter. I liked your balloon idea. He filled up a Burger King full of balloons. That was his art, right? And you cut to some archival footage of the news is there, and they're like, somebody's filled a Burger King full of balloons. And they're interviewing someone who just wants to get a Whopper, and they just say, I don't get it. All I want is a Whopper, and some asshole thinks it's art to fill up my Burger King full of balloons.
So even though he created the emoji, he's still an artist in his own right, and maybe a little bit obscure or weird.
So maybe in the beginning, he's an obscure artist, and he's being I'm assuming this kind of takes place somewhere between the, I don't know, 60s and 90s. That's a pretty big space. I mean, but this is going to span his whole life. Yeah. But there's a lot of surreal and abstract artists coming from that time. And so he's grown into this and feels like he's trying to find his space in the world. He felt like he was being drowned out. And so he does a lot of different stuff. And one of them is that sounds sort of like performance artish, where you would fill the restaurant full of balloons and see what happens.
Yeah.
So that would be one thing he tries, and we can come up with a bunch of things that he tries, and one of them just becomes famous. Eventually, that's where it kicks up. And then I did this, and
it's the one thing that he found that
people actually kind of remember. But then we'll cut to some historians who are when so and so did this, it changed
the art world.
Changed the art world. He was really hot for a good 2 months, and then
then interesting, the tech world got wind of this winky face, and it revolutionized messaging forever.
You should meet Steve Jobs at a party and think that Steve Jobs stole. He should talk about meeting Steve Jobs at a party and how he thinks that he stole.
I like the idea too that he despises the newer emoji that are actually faces. He's an old school guy that only likes the letters and symbol combinations.
Yeah.
I also was thinking this is kind of, I guess, maybe why they're following him is he's actually creating an app that only does the symbol emojis, and he's going to publish it. They're following him sort of like the what was the video game one with Meat Boy?
Oh, indie game.
So they're kind of like the indie game where they're gonna do him before and then film him after to see how successful his app is, and maybe that's maybe that's why he's on top of the building.
And he could be working with programmers and new artists to try and make this app, and we could interview them, and they're like, I don't get it. Why would you want to go back to making it's kind of stupid, but he's paying us for it. So
Right. So just to be clear, so he's kind of an obscure artist that is well known for certain things, but mostly the emoji. And this is kind of a story of him trying to find a second life in today, in the modern age. And so the documentary crew is following him around because he's making an app. He's doing something big. He thinks it's doing paying homage to his art. So he's doing that thing that some celebrities do where they just won't let something die and they just keep doing it and over and over and over again. And he's just kind of failing.
I've got another one of his early attempts at art. He would paint. He would paint feet on his chest, and then he'd do push-ups on a canvas to make it look like footsteps, but they weren't actually footsteps because they were painted on his chest.
Perfect.
Yeah. I mean, is that kind of where you were going? I mean, because I feel like we're revisiting the emoji thing a lot, and so I wonder if we're, as a group, we're sort of trying to narrow the scope of his body of work.
So if we go, do we actually want someone jumping off the building at the end? Or is that just a joke?
They might talk him down.
I want it, but we don't need it.
Well, because I wonder, again, so like his whole thing was, I guess his whole thing was he was very interested in the symbol emoji, and to the point of paying people to make this app. They're paying him like all of his fortune, and of course it's not going to do well in the App Store. And I just wonder if he's up on top of the building. Like at the end, they're like filming him, and maybe that's when they definitely break their fourth wall, where the camera crew goes out to like stop him from jumping the wall. But so the idea, I guess, was like he's just so in love with his famous creation of the symbol emoji that's all he can like think about afterwards. Or again, maybe he does other things that just never sticks.
I think
does that answer the question, or is that
yes?
Not where we want to
so
go?
No. I think we can. I hesitate to even say agree to disagree, because I'm not necessarily disagreeing. I think maybe through a series of trial and errors, he's an artist, and he has a series of failures, and then the emoji is his claim to fame. It's his thing, and that's why he's sort of obsessed with it, right? And that's why he refuses to let it go. And then the documentary starts to refocus. The mockumentary starts to focus in on that, right? And so it's picture. I sort of equate it to a band. If you were watching a documentary about a band or something like that, they have a series of albums, but then there's that one hit. They have that one hit, and this is his hit.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so this would be like if a band, I don't know the right words for this, but like remade that like a 50-year anniversary. Like they're trying to like get their,
or they're trying to get their sound back.
Yeah, they're trying to get their like.
But it doesn't.
Back.
But it doesn't ring. It doesn't resonate anymore.
Right. And he feels like the rest of the world has sort of bastardized the thing that he created by making it.
You can change like the skin color of them.
Right. But now they actually have faces. Right.
Yeah.
You know, and,
like real faces, and you can change the skin color so they're more customizable. But his was abstract, and it was,
Yeah.
That's what was beautiful about it.
It was universal.
It was universal.
It was neither black, white.
You could change the color of the font. It was so easy back then.
Yeah.
You could change whatever color you wanted.
And I don't know if this is where you were going, Justin, but that last moment on the roof of the skyscraper, he's got because I was
coming
going
back to my
so he's got the emoji painted on his chest.
It's just a big smiley face.
Yeah, and he's gonna jump off, and his last performance art piece is gonna be him
when they take his body up,
putting the emoji on the pavement.
Oh my god, that's great. I was gonna say, would it be cool? Because we've actually like covered a lot of different points in the story. Like, what if we went back to the beginning now and tried to like tell his story through, knowing that we've got these points?
Yeah, because I think that's the hardest thing. I like the idea of all of his artwork, but I was literally just drawing a blank too on like what his past art was.
And I feel like a lot of documentaries go from like, these kind of documentaries go like, well, when I was a kid, this inspired me, and then like I always thought of this guy.
Right.
He drew X's on doors, and then he tries to find his voice, he gets famous, he kind of has a falling off. And then, yeah, the rest of it is sort of like a downhill, like, people stole my idea, I couldn't think of anything new, and here I am now. And then it picks up.
Right. And I feel like this is where the possibilities kind of get endless, because it can be about failed relationships, because you could do an interview with his ex-wife. You could do an interview with a rival artist who, like I said earlier, also claims that he invented the emoji. You know, we can definitely start to fill in some of those gaps.
So what's his name? Let's go to the beginning. What's his name?
It's weird because it kind of doesn't matter. I mean, he could be Tyler Biltmore for all I care.
So, I mean, with some of these artists and stuff, I was trying to think of like, so with these artists, I was trying to think of more of the foreign name or something. So I was going with like Frederic or something that's normal, but that he's twisted a bit.
Or it's like when people have monikers, like Pez. Like his name is Spaz.
Maybe eventually he says like, but you might know me better as Spaz.
I don't know.
I was born Rupert Eddington. I feel like, so this might go into a little bit of a story, and this might help us with his name.
Yeah.
But because he likes he thinks he came up with the emoji. He claims to have come up with the emoji. It sounds like he really likes symbols. Maybe he was inspired by symbols. And so I kind of imagine him coming from middle America, where there's lots of like street signs and railroad crossings and just really boring suburban things that inspired him. And then he learned about graffiti at some point, those spray painters.
I picture him going through this box of old photos, and he holds up a picture of him and his dog naturally has the emoji pattern on its fur.
They never talk about it though.
Right.
Well, I was going because like I did like the idea of like the railroad crossings and stuff, because those big circles like X's and like he's like, I'm just getting inspiration from my surroundings.
I think the beginning of the photo box is just him talking about growing up in his small town in Oklahoma, and how he just loved to take pictures of the signs around town, like.
Right.
Yeah.
And so naturally you cut that with an interview with his parents, right? Because they're going to provide the testimony to his childhood.
His room was full of signs, and when he started stealing them, we told him,
boy loves signs.
Better stop.
The boy loved signs.
Yeah.
So
It's chapter 1.
So going on that, so his real name is, because that was the point we were trying to do.
Yeah, I was trying to help.
But so I
now
like where he's from, because he's
some
his
middle America suburban town.
Tyler Jones.
There we go.
I don't know. Is that a good Tyler? Is that a good nickname?
Yeah, it's
Tyler Jones.
totally fine with
Yeah,
me, man.
but-
and he can always get a name. He can always change his name when he becomes famous.
Well, I was gonna say I figure he'd have a. Oh my god! Is his name just an emoji? Like Prince?
Or a
It's
symbol?
it's like Prince, where it's just a symbol.
Shit. Yeah, it definitely is.
You might know me as £, but then they turn it into hashtag, and he's like really pissed.
The Octothorpe.
Yeah, that's good.
I know I was gonna go with percent, but I like that he had the hashtag before everyone else.
yeah.
But he didn't call it hashtag.
Right? No, yeah, exactly.
So now everyone, yeah.
Yeah. Because, he calls it the Octothorpe.
Yeah.
And then, he thought that was really cool. Like,
Yeah.
I am Octothorpe.
And then he went around calling himself Octothorpe.
So maybe he put hashtag TJ, like was his.
Nice.
And so he just hates the internet so much.
Yeah, this one's weird because it's not. I like where we're going because we're
kind of through it now.
Yeah, we're just going to take it timeline. We'll take it
Because we
kind
know
of
his
decade
name,
by
we know where he
decade,
grew up, we know what what his inspiration was.
and we have an idea of our ending, right? Because it's his last hurrah,
Yeah.
literally.
So
we never got the line.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of. I mean, I feel like that's going to show up in one of his histories, right?
Yeah.
So I think a natural progression would be after we talk a little bit about his childhood, and he develops this persona, which is Octothorpe TJ.
Does he move to a big city? Because
Well, I would think he would go to like art school.
yeah,
You know, and then
Well,
you
yeah.
then
But I
he-
mean, he could go to like one of the
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a New York school or an LA school.
So he goes to art school in the big city,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where we would kind of hear an interview from one of his teachers or one of his classmates or something like that.
And this is where he's trying to find his voice.
I actually, depending how key it needs to be, one of his art, like the balloon thing, could have been maybe he just drew an X on the door and he was like, I just want to see how many people wouldn't go in. It was like, so he could just I would draw an X on the door, and that was one of his like art projects or art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
I like
would
how
they
he
call
goes
their-
through these phases of like social experiments
Yeah, that's right.
and performance pieces and
Yeah. So maybe that's the thing that he did in art school and college is he was going through this phase where he would draw X's on the doors, and the teachers or his professor would talk about how it was just really fucking annoying.
yeah.
And he like, but they cut back to him, and he's like very proud of it. He's like,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
I would draw around the entrance, and like people would just go around. They'd walk to the other side of the building.
I'd set up a 60mm camera and just watch them try and figure out where to go.
The teacher says something about how it was all fun and games until that fire broke out, and no one used the fire exit.
And then
I would have gotten away with, or like, I wouldn't have gotten in trouble if I hadn't filmed all of them.
I see, yeah,
Maybe he
'cause-
gets expelled from school.
Yeah, it cuts to him. He's like, I pulled the fire alarm.
So yeah, maybe he does get expelled from school.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't finish art school because of this thing, and now he's alone in the big city, still trying to find his voice, I guess.
Yeah, so this kind of enters his starving artist period.
Yeah.
So he flunks out of art school or whatever, and so he moves to the inner city where he kind of lives impoverished, not because he has to, but because he wants to, and that's his perception of being an artist. And
I do want to give this some time periods because I feel like he could be part, like sort of like a Forrest Gump sort of thing. He could be a part of some events depending on what time it takes place in. You know?
right, I mean, for sure.
Yeah.
So
And
let's
obviously now, like the end of it happens now.
Yeah. I guess I think it depends on how many beats we want to give it, right? And so I'm thinking about beats in reference to decades.
Right.
And so if our last beat is modern day, and then we take another beat backwards to the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, and the 60s. So let's say he's born in the 60s. He goes to college in the 70s. No.
No,
Oh,
he
80s.
growing up. Yeah, he go to
Yeah.
college in the 80s.
Okay, so he was born in the 50s,
Yeah. Then he,
goes to college in the 70s.
yes.
He goes to the inner city in the late 70s,
Yeah.
early 80s.
Yeah.
Let's say
Maybe,
like,
yeah, maybe he has his break in the early 90s.
Yeah.
Because that would fit with the text and emoji kind of stuff.
Yeah.
so basically through
Hope
the
these add up. Someone.
so basically through the 80s, he's living this sort of starving artist lifestyle, and this is his sort of trial and
Or no,
error.
it would be the 70s. Well, late 70s, early. Yeah.
Yeah, through the late 70s,
Mm-hmm.
let's say from 75 to 1990,
Mm-hmm.
he's 15 years, he's just kind of experimenting, doing different things. In the 90s is when he's got that big hit. That's when
Mm-hmm.
he discovers the emoji.
Did they always call it an emoji?
Well, that's the minute it left my lips, I was like, he's got to have another word for it.
Yeah, yeah. I don't actually
Okay.
know that much about the history
Well,
of
that's
the,
why I wonder, like, as we're going through this, is emoji technically the face ones that we know in, like,
So if we were actually going to make this, we would need to do some research to try and fit him in. Yeah.
because, like, is it just called a smiley face? Was my, like, you know what I mean? Is
I
it-
have no idea.
Abstractacon.
I'm the one person who probably shouldn't know this in the room, but
I like Abstractacon.
Yeah,
Also-
for
So
Abstractacon.
he calls it the Abstractacon.
Mm. because it doesn't look like anybody. It's just a
Yeah.
smiley face, a frowny face. The Abstractacon.
I only laugh because I know this guy, and I've seen something. I've seen like a spiel from the guy who invented the smiley face. So I know this guy is a real person.
But is it real?
Are we really close?
Do you think he would make an appearance in our film and then they would duke it out? They would have a fist fight?
So basically, after this is done, I want to look it up to see because
Okay.
like I'm pretty sure
Got
I
it.
remember him like anyway.
All right.
But maybe we could work it in where he's the one who might have stolen the idea from him.
What is it? Octagon? What is the?
The Abstractacon.
No, but what's the hashtag?
Octothorpe.
Octothorpe DJ.
Octothorpe is a real thing.
No, I know.
Okay.
I was.
I mean, in that whole 15-year period, I feel like that's where we just have a
That's
lot.
where we fill in these like
Yeah.
fill the thing with balloons.
You just have a lot of fun with all the different shit that he tried to do, whether it's filling up a Burger King full of balloons or
Maybe he does have a failed relationship in there somewhere,
yeah.
like another artist. They just couldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is this very like New York starving artist.
Can his partner go on to actually create? Like she's the person who creates the hashtag, like just to get back at him.
Ooh.
I don't know. Just,
She's the one who steals it.
she's the one who starts to use it like in Twitter and like creates.
Right. Yeah. That's fun. I like that.
That's part of his story. That's why
Yeah.
he's like also down about it and.
Yeah. Because I mean, really, we are kind of building up toward that last scene because he is going to kill himself. It's sort of a poignant moment because I mean, everything he's ever done has been either stolen and he's just not recognized for it.
I mean, and what I'm curious is, I mean, I think you and Chris have a better idea of how this works and stuff with the mockumentary.
Yeah.
Do one of you? I think we're almost ready for like the recap to kind of like we kind of already did it a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. But I feel like what we're trying to do is we're in his 15-year sort of experimental period.
Okay.
And then eventually through a series of trial and errors, he has his big hit, which is the Abstractacon, right?
He was frustrated at sitting at his typewriter, or whatever it was. Maybe he was at what if he was at the library? Like it wasn't like because he obviously he's a starving artist and he just like is playing on the computer and he's frustrated, just makes the thing. And
Because up until this time, everyone would either type out like, "Oh, I'm feeling happy," or "You make me smile," or like, "I'm smiling." And so until one day he was like, "You know what? I'm just gonna," and he just like # smiley face like sends, or I guess.
I think as an artist.
Oh.
Sorry.
I was going to say, so this, his significant other, the person that he's in a relationship with, she has all these letters, these typewriter letters where he typed it. So she's got sort of proof
Yeah.
of it. And she, during the interview, she said, yeah, this is where it all started. This is the very first one.
Yeah.
I like that.
And it was something really, really, mundane. Like,
Don't forget
that
to
was-
pick up milk.
yeah.
I thought it was like, "I can't wait to see you later." Wiki.
Oh.
I guess the wiki face is later, but
I got the milk. Yeah, and so at this point, he's come up with it, and he starts to like. I think this is where you would cut to. It'd be like a faster edit, and you
Yeah.
would cut to art critics talking about him. You might throw in some actual art critics.
Oh,
You know,
man, that
this
would
is
be
where
funny.
you would throw in real.
If we could get Roman Mars
Yes.
in our little mockumentary thing, I would
Doing a 99% episode of
Oh my god.
So is there a scene? Like I think you guys have a way better idea of this than me. And I'm just like throwing in little tidbits. So is there a scene where he's at one of those? What do they do downtown? Like an art gallery. And he's just he's just got a framed photo
There's
of just the smiley face, and maybe that's it at this time, or does he have like maybe multiple? He's got multiple.
I think he'd
smileys.
he'd start at smiley face and then he'd go to like O face or sad face and then there'd be a whole art gallery full of giant prints of white canvas with just like one somewhere on it.
Because I like the idea of he does a smiley face and like that goes forever until it starts to die down, and then he figures out like so. Then he has to keep recreating new smileys. Is the idea versus like he doesn't do them all at once. He's just like, oh man,
Yeah,
and he just has to keep feeding everyone quicker and quicker.
So he gets a lot of notoriety for this one thing, and so he starts to just mutate it
Slightly.
bit by bit. So then he introduces the winky face,
Yeah.
and the art community loses their fucking mind with
when does he introduce the?
I was gonna say I don't think he does yet.
the big boob lady.
Yeah. I was gonna say I don't think he does any of the dirty stuff. I think he blames like it being stolen and kids like taking over for like adding this like
right
dirtiness to it.
And so he's kind of riding high right now.
I want to see at one of his art, like when they show footage from one of his art galleries, it's like young Robert Downey Jr.'s like, this guy's fucking amazing. I love him. Like changing the art world. That's one of the scenes.
Oh,
There's,
is Robert Downey Jr. like a big art fan?
I don't know. Oh, could be. That's what I'm saying. I hope he is. Kind of. I just picked it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Got it.
Yeah. Working on the obscurity of the mockumentary.
Yeah. And so he's kind of riding this crest, right? And then we're kind of at our until. So it's the mid 90s, right? The tech boom.
Yeah.
So probably almost like early 2000s would probably be
Okay.
more of where this would probably fit in.
Okay. So he's ridden this wave 10 years. You know, he's the guy, this is his thing. And then unbeknownst to him, technology, something completely out of left field, kind of steals his intellectual property.
But I was going to say, so up until the iPhone, everyone is making those symbols, right, on your phone until you get like the emoji keyboards.
Yep.
And maybe even the original iPhone still had just making the symbols.
I don't know.
So
But so up until then, everyone's, unless you like, so AIM, I think had like you could pick the faces, but on the phone, everyone's still actually making those symbols.
So this might get into his character a little bit. So when people start using their phones to make his art, I feel like that would hurt him. I feel like that devalues him as a. So I think his downward starts there, where people start to recreate his art, and all of a sudden these things that he had are meaningless.
Yeah.
And then the next, like the final punch is that they change it.
To go off that, so yeah, so maybe he likes, before that you're typing your letters out on typewriters, and like you're only using one, right? You're being very cautious with it, and very giving a lot of elevation. And then like even with emails, you're still not typing a bunch of them, but then when you get to like AIM and stuff, you start to kind of over abuse them, and that's when maybe he starts voicing his opinion. And then with phones, he's like, this is just garbage. Or like people they're just communicating via like my Abstractacons, and then the iPhone just completely bastardized it with the emoji face, and that's when he loses. That's when we pick up.
Yeah.
So maybe this is like not nowadays. This is like 2008, because the iPhone came out in 2007.
Yeah. So I mean, that's definitely something that he would talk about, right? So he would talk about this sort of fall from grace, this downward spiral. People are taking what he would consider his art for granted, right?
Like his name isn't even on it anymore.
Well, they didn't even call him Abstractacon. They just,
they don't.
They just call him emojis, and he's
Well, like
Right.
no one realizes that it was a form of art. Now it's just something you do on your phone.
oh, that's good.
Yeah. I like that.
And obviously we talk about him trying to find a new voice.
Right.
So there would be another sort of period of failed, jokey sort of things.
So really, it's kind of about where the documentary catches up with him, right?
Yeah.
And I like to think that the documentary catches up with him a few days before he launches himself off this building. And maybe he's hired this crew, unbeknownst to them, what he's going to do. Basically, this is his big comeback, right? So after the emoji and sort of the bastardization of his art has occurred, he starts to develop this plan, right? How am I going to get back into the spotlight? How am I going to get people to remember me and recognize and remember my name?
So are we could we decide if we want, because there was the part where he might have been making an app, like maybe he's trying to join the new world by making this app that only prints in his things, And when it fails, he decides like, well, I'm going to go out with a blaze of glory.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to draw,
I like that because it's
So maybe he hired maybe he hired the documentary crew to help with the launch of his app.
I'm starting to feel sad for this guy.
No, I mean it's like a tragic kind of story.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how I picture the app. Is the app just a thing that you install so you can put those emojis on your phone, or I had the idea of maybe it takes pictures and it actually detects what face you're making and it puts his emoji like on your face. And so it's almost interesting. It's almost an interesting app, but like, of course, no one actually likes putting just the emoticon like right on your face.
Yeah,
but
it's interesting because it's got to be an app that's developed by an artist, and so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, which is why it doesn't catch on.
Yeah,
I like the idea of maybe it replaces your face,
or
sort of superimposes a.
Yeah, because like that software exists because whatever, Google had a thing where you would take a photo and it put the emoji next to your face that best represents, which was like almost spot on. So like the technology exists to like just replace your face or just shove an emoticon or an Abstractacon right on your face.
It's just a really big and sort of, you can't really tell what the app is supposed to be doing. It just uses his thing, and even the programmers don't get it. And he hired this crew to help tell his past story and to like present like his new idea.
He's doing a Kickstarter.
Oh, this is what he thinks is his big comeback, which is why the film crew is there, right?
Yeah.
And then
but they keep filming.
And this is when, from a timeline standpoint, we catch up, right? Because now it turns the corner from being a historic documentary to a sort of a reality type documentary, right? So it's present day, it's in the moment, and so this documentary crew is there for the launch of his app, right? Yeah, and then shit goes south,
and they keep recording, but the story continues as he explains like it didn't.
Yeah,
it's not working. I don't get it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm picturing I don't know why I'm fixated on the app, but the app actually takes your whole picture, makes it a blank canvas, and just puts like the main face that it saw. So it goes back to his original artwork, and it's just it's a sideways Abstractacon.
So it takes this picture of a couple. Yeah, and they're side by side, and the guy's got his hand over his gal's shoulder, and you apply this app, and it just turns into two side-by-side smiley faces on a white background.
Let's make this app afterwards. But
yeah. No, and it's funny because then it catches up with the timeline, and then we kind of get into reality as opposed to the past. And then things kind of, for the audience, things start to get increasingly more suspicious and a little bit darker. Yeah. He had this final blow with the failure of his app. He tried to enter the mainstream again, and he's just on camera. He's behaving differently and this sort of thing. And he says, the documentary crew one day gets a text from him and says,
it's just a sad face.
And I was going to say, on the text it says, "Meet me on the roof, sad face."
Yeah, because we could have sort of a different kind of breaking the fourth wall. Where we have the crew like walking up the stairs, and they there's a bit where they have a conversation where it's like what does he want? Like, okay, so we're heading up to the roof to meet him. Like, they kind of leave in some stuff that they would have normally cut out, because when they come up on the roof to get ready to interview him, he's like standing on the edge, and they're like, what are you doing?
So
he just faced toward them with the emoticon, with the Abstractacon painted on his chest, and he's just arms are stretched.
He turns around.
So I like the idea again.
It feels weird.
Yeah, like he like goes in his office and he's like super quiet. He's like not acting the same. He's not like smiling at the camera anymore.
His house is all a wreck. And like in his interviews, he's just like disheveled.
Yeah, his hair is growing. Like,
I mean, I like what Chris said, because there's even sort of another layer of subtext that you can add to the film, where the documentary crew starts to leave more and more stuff in that they would normally cut out. So the camera, it's like the producer, so you got the producer on camera saying, I don't know, he's not returning my calls.
Yeah.
Right.
And so So we're on the roof.
And they're like moving faster. Sorry, not to like,
No, no.
it's got that like that weird motion where like normally it'd be nice and smooth, but they're like kind of running and like the camera like goes down a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah, when they get
you're
on the
seeing
roof.
people's feet. and-
It's definitely like the camera is sort of forgotten a bit. It's not real, and like like the sound guy's up there like trying to walk out towards him, and the producer's trying to talk him off the ledge. And this is where I was actually curious if he should jump or not. I mean, it could end with them talking him off the ledge, and
Yeah.
we are left sort of like what's going to happen to this guy? We don't know, or he could jump.
Okay.
And we, I mean.
I guess, yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. Does he jump? So the documentary crew eventually catches up with him. He's got the Abstractacon painted on his chest, and he's ready for his last hurrah, something that's going to put him in the history books as the greatest artist ever, because he's the guy who launched himself off a giant skyscraper.
And left a winky face on the sidewalk.
I mean, I gotta tell you, I think he ought to jump.
So let me help. I'm not going either way. I just want to set some context, because say this did happen. Say you were on the documentary crew, and this guy is going to jump off the roof. And if he jumped off the roof, it would make the news that he did this, and you guys were making a documentary about him. And so, one, obviously, if you make the documentary, the popularity of it will go up. But people might also say that you're exploiting his death to make this movie. Or you might say that because he died, we have to make this movie so people understand his life.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like the Man on the Wire, right? Like,
Yeah.
I never watched it, but like, I mean, I know how that ends.
Right.
But I don't remember if in the documentary if they show that or not. If you want a twist,
Yeah.
I'll throw these in there. because
Okay,
I don't
yeah,
twist.
I've got a twist for you too.
So the producer or whatever is trying to talk him down, and the guy's like, no. And he's like, well, if you're going to jump, like, give me a hug. And so the guy hugs him, and then when they pull apart, he sees the Abstractacon now painted on the other guy's chest. And maybe that's enough to, like, make him see the good in the world or something. Like, he's wearing, like, an all-white shirt, and so it's his art.
So he realizes that maybe he could, instead of killing himself and having it on the sidewalk, that like by hugging people with this, he's creating art at this. So like that becomes his new idea.
Okay.
Yeah. So
That's a
he goes
good
and hugs
one.
all the other like camera
That's-
crew.
that's-
And then
cute. I like
the
that.
documentary ends with like footage of the new, like him, like them talking about on the news, like, this artist is making waves by, hugging people and leaving, emojis on them, and it actually ends on this really high note where he does become kind of famous again.
Right.
I like the idea that so maybe it starts out because everyone has heard of, instead of Comic-Con, you've heard of Abstractacon. And like the whole event is everyone just gets together and like
hugs.
and puts different Abstractacons on their chest. And so by the end, like, it just hugs either random strangers is probably the best way. You just like walk down the street, kind of like the zombie crawls, but instead you're just,
Just hugging people.
So for the record, I like yours better, but I'm going to toss it out there anyway, and we can cut it if we want. But I was going to say he jumps and he survives, right? So, and that's the only reason they're able to show it is because he doesn't die.
Sure.
And you like afterwards, the documentary crew catches up with him in a hospital. He's like in a full body cast and shit like that. But I like yours. I like your idea better only because through the most desperate measure possible, he does find that second life. I think that's really
I think
cool.
it's like a double twist.
because he becomes popular again, which is
Yeah.
what he wanted anyway.
Yeah, and it kind of ends there. Like, we don't know what's going to happen to him in the future.
Yeah.
But he did get his second.
It's cool because it relates to this concept of art's found in really, really weird places, and it sort of echoes how he found it in the first place, right? Because he finds it in a really unexpected place, just like he found it originally when he was on his typewriter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Just to recap, Tyler Jones, an artist growing up in Oklahoma, is obsessed with street signs and iconography in general. His parents don't quite get it. No one in his community gets it. He adopts the moniker Octothorpe TJ.
AKA hashtag TJ, just to make.
Well, eventually.
Well, I want to make
Yeah.
sure in case people don't know
Yeah.
what Octothorpe is.
Yep.
I think
Yep.
we described it earlier, but
Yeah. Eventually goes on to art school because no one in his hometown understands him, and starts to experiment with these X's on the doors.
Try to find his voice.
Yep, he's trying to find his voice. Eventually, flunks out of art school and moves to the big city and begins this 15-year starving artist period where he sort of experiments with different styles and that sort of thing until eventually in the early 90s he discovers what he calls the Abstractacon, which is just a colon and a parentheses. Mm-hmm. This really launches his career. He's on art magazines, and he's, art critics are talking about his work, and he's on cloud nine. And eventually we make it to the early 2000s when the tech boom has sort of adopted what he considers his art.
And bastardized it.
Yeah, and bastardized it by including it as not only a way to text a smiley face, but then they also continue to mutate it into an actual smiley face. And this begins his downward spiral because no one recognizes him as the genesis of this idea. Mm-hmm. And he also doesn't think it's art anyhow, right? Mm-hmm. And so eventually this is at the point when the documentary crew catches up with him because he's trying to enter the mainstream again and join the herd, so to speak, by creating this app. And the documentary crew is there to sort of
tell his history.
Yeah, not only to tell his history, but also to capture the reaction mm-hmm. to the app, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it fails terribly because it's this app that simply takes a photo and replaces it with whatever Abstractacon is appropriate for the photo.
On a white background.
Yeah. So in other words, it's very, very, very minimalistic. And this is when the documentary starts to take a little bit of a turn, and it becomes very real in the sense that the producer can't get a hold of him. He just had this massive failure, and the crew gets a text saying, "Meet me on the top of this skyscraper, frowny face." And so they eventually catch up with him, and they find him on the edge with an Abstractacon painted on his chest, and he says that he's going to make his mark in this world and go out with a bang, so to speak. And the producer, which is now kind of a second character, sort of a supporting role, mm-hmm. Says, "Listen, I'm going to support you 100%, but all I need is a hug before you go." And unbeknownst to him, the Abstractacon kind of rubs off on his white shirt, and as he pulls away, there's sort of this epiphany that this is the second life that Tyler Jones, Octothorpe TJ, was searching for, and everything is right with the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That becomes his second creation.
Like,
the hugging
yeah,
and the sharing of the symbol.
Yeah, I like I think maybe then you have these Abstractacons where people.
It's like flash mobbing, right?
Yeah,
it's people get together and they hug each other.
they paint the Abstractacon on their chest and they hug strangers. Ideally,
yeah. Mm-hmm. It becomes like an internet phenomenon, like planking or the
ice bucket challenge.
Yeah, I was gonna say the other one, the
mannequin challenge.
Jesus Christ.
Yep.
Cool.
That's the story.
Cool.
Fade to black.
Yeah.
All right.
And fade to black. Nice.
Or should we
have to come up with a title.
Oh, we do need a title.
Either, Abstractacon, these are my two, right? Or the hashtag TJ.
I was gonna say something about symbols, like symbol of love,
or is it
symbol
just
of hope,
or is it just the smiley face?
I think that is that a documentary?
That's right.
Just the smiley face.
It's gonna be really hard to Well, it's not gonna be hard to type, but I'm saying that's gonna be the episode name.
Yeah.
I mean, on the one, it's like that movie Pi.
Uh-huh.
But at least it has a spelling.
Yeah.
I mean, Abstractacon
Abstractacon is great.
Yeah,
that was my
I
first
like
one.
Abstractacon.
I do too.
Something with symbol in it, like the word symbol.
I mean, it could be a subtitle. It could be Abstractacon. I don't know.
Yeah.
The symbol for something.
Symbol of hope. I think that's too leading. Like I think
Yeah.
it tells you what happens at the end.
I just like Abstractacon.
I do too.
All right.
Perfect. Let's not get in the way of a good thing. If you have any suggestions on other art pieces created by Tyler Jones, email us at storymachine9000@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at storymachine9k or use the hashtag SM9k, Octothorpe 9k.
I want to put that in there.
Our logo was by David Paget. Our music by David Ailing. This episode was edited by Joshua Lytle. We'll see you next time.